Zoning Board of Appeals of the Town of Milton. It is Tuesday, January 12th, 2021. We're here this evening to begin and open the public hearing with respect to the comprehensive permit application involving the property at 648 Canton Avenue in Milton. My name is Brian Hurley. I will serve as chairman of the board for purposes of this hearing. And with me this evening are Mike Brown and Ted Daber, and the three of us together will comprise the board. As I said, this application involves the property at 648 Canton Avenue. I understand that the applicant, Mr. Tim Posey, as manager of a limited liability company, is represented this evening on this at this hearing by Jesse Schomer from the firm of Regnati and Stereo. I also understand, and I assume that Mr. Corcoran, Ned Corcoran, is on tonight. I understand that he will be representing several of the so-called Canton Avenue neighbors in connection with this hearing. The purpose of the hearing tonight was to open the hearing, which has some legal significance to it. But we are not planning to take testimony in any form this evening, but rather to limit the scope of this first session of the public hearing to setting out a schedule, having a discussion about what will happen in the course of the public hearings as they begin to unfold, to discuss a bit a view, when it might be taken, and what the sort of conditions and circumstances might be with respect to that view. And with that in mind, we will go forward. As you know, all of the hearings, public hearings, are recorded. The record of the hearings is assembled here at the town hall. For all of the hearings that we're going to have on a going forward basis, I anticipate that we will begin at 7 o'clock and typically not run later than 10 o'clock in the evening, unless there's some unusual circumstance that would require us to go a little bit later. For example, if we had a witness on who was close to the end and maybe needed 10 or 15 minutes in order to complete the testimony. When we have the public hearings, and I'll get to this in a moment, obviously everyone is invited to participate, but we will, for each person, have a limited number of questions. We can't go on forever with this. And it is very important, and I will make this point now, and I will emphasize it throughout the course of the hearings, that all questions are directed to the board, not to each other, individuals, but rather to the board, and then the board will figure out the best way or the best person to respond to those particular questions. We will ask individuals, give individuals the opportunity to make statements in addition to the questions that I just addressed. We'll ask that statements be kept to 3 to 5 minutes, and we look not to repeat some of the same points that are heard from in some of the other statements. So we want everyone to participate. We have to limit the time for each person who participates, and we hope to hear every important point that you want to raise to the board. It's important to us as we try to make the right decision here. The hearing generally after tonight, as I said, this is really just about scheduling and logistics, but the hearing as it progresses will, I think, start with a site visit, and that's something that we can talk about in a bit. I know that there was a site visit in one of the other 40B permit applications that came before another group of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I think it probably makes sense to have a site visit before we begin the testimony. In cases that I've done in courts over the years, I've done it both ways. But in this case, I think it makes sense to start with the site visit first. But I would love to have Mike's or Ted's thoughts with respect to that issue, the scheduling of site visit.
Mr. Chair, I think that makes sense, unless anybody...
Mike, we can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Are you unmuted, Mike?
I'm unmuted, yes. Hold on.
Ted?
Can you hear me? Ted?
I can't hear either of you.
I'm unmuted and my volume's up.
Ted, can you hear me?
It's going to echo. We need to shut.
Yes, I can, Mike.
Yeah, it's a problem at town hall.
Can you hear me?
We're going to try to do something to deal with this sound issue.
Yeah. Mike, you can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Can I just mute Ryan all the way? He can use me. Ryan?
Sure.
Okay.
You're just going to shut this down?
Ted, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you
Okay,
hear
well
me?
set. Let's roll. Going to use this computer.
Bev, you can hear me?
Yeah, well set. We're going to transfer. Brian's going to use mine.
Okay.
Okay, well set. Yep.
I apologize for this. Was everyone able to hear me up till this point?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, because I wouldn't want to repeat myself. So, as I had started to say, and I actually had asked Ted and Mike for their input as to what they thought in terms of review, whether we should have it at the outset or whether we should wait till testimony is heard, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Mike?
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to have I think it's appropriate to do the site view at the beginning of the hearing as well, prior to testimony.
Ted?
Mr. Chair, I agree with that as well. I think that's a good idea.
Okay, then that's what we'll do. And we'll get to the specific dates in a moment. When we get to the hearings, before we get to the dates, just to sort of run through how I foresee that the hearings would go. I think at the outset, we would ask for an introductory statement from town officials who wanted to make a statement. I think that would be appropriate under the circumstances that we start with that. From that, I would turn to the applicant, probably Mr. Schomer, who would introduce the project and then make a presentation of the application in all of its many components. And that could be done obviously from that would be the first part. We would have an introduction, then a presentation by the applicant. And then obviously that presentation would include a number of witnesses who would testify with respect to the many aspects of this application, ranging from wetland issues to traffic, et cetera. And so we would take that testimony from the applicant. Then we would have testimony from the town and any town experts or others that they wanted to present, and we'd get that testimony, and then any questions from town representatives that they wanted to pose to either the board or to the applicant. After the conclusion of the presentation by the applicant and the town, I would anticipate that we would have testimony and questions from members of the general public. And as I said earlier, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to want to share with us their thoughts, and we'll ask that the testimony be limited both in time and that an effort be made not to make it repetitive. Once all of that testimony is complete from applicants, experts, the town, members of the public, members of the town, then we will allow the applicant to have a rebuttal rebuttal. By that I mean to address some of the points that came up in the other testimony. And at the conclusion of all that testimony and the rebuttal by the applicant, we would anticipate closing the hearing, closing the evidentiary portion of the hearing. I would also anticipate that we would ask for perhaps brief closing arguments from counsel for the applicant, for the town, for any of the neighbors who have engaged counsel. And then at the conclusion of all of that oral presentation, we would ask that we have a closing written statement from all of the various parties. Once we have all of that information, at some point, I would expect that we would have a public meeting of the board open to the public, at which we would not be taking hearing, where we would deliberate and discuss our thoughts about a decision, come to a vote on how that decision should unfold, and then we'd go into the process of writing the final decision on the matter. And I'm happy to report that Mr. Daber has graciously volunteered to draft the decision, and I'm sure he'll do just a fine job once we've went through this entire process. So before I turn to dates that we have in mind, and I've shared these with Mr. Brown and Mr. Daber, does anybody have any questions about anything I've said so far, or any thoughts? Mr. Schomer, is what I've outlined seem okay to you?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So far, so good. Just to note, I believe I'm on this Zoom as an attendee rather than as a panelist. So if the board members would like me to be on video, you'll need to allow me to do that. It doesn't really matter to me, Jesse. If you think I should see you, I suppose we can get you on, but as long as I can hear you, that's really what's important. I'm fine either way, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Mr. Corcoran, are you in attendance this evening? I guess not. Okay. All right. Well, there being no questions as to sort of process and the procedure that we will follow, let me turn to a schedule. And as I said, I've run this by Mr. Daber and Mr. Brown, and I'm going to just lay it out for you, and then we can, if anyone has any questions or comments, thoughts, I can entertain those. So obviously, we've opened the public hearing tonight on January 12th. Now, under the statutory schedule, we would have until, my calculation is June 30th to close the public hearings, which is 180 days from today. That's what the statute requires. And then we would have until August 9th to issue a written decision, which is 40 days from the date of the close of the public hearing. But I certainly expect that we're going to finish this public hearing long before June 30th, and then the 40 days will be triggered from that point. So what I had in mind was to do a site visit on March 6th, which is when we're going to begin that, which will be the next sort of event in this public hearing process, March 6th at 10 o'clock. And we can get into more detail on this later as the date approaches. But I would have in mind that we'd have some limitation on the number of people that would attend the site visit. I would expect that we'll have a site visit at the conclusion as well, so that people that would like to see the site, if they don't make it in the first round, they could make it at the conclusion. I know in another case that they've limited it to 20, and I guess sort of signed up for it on a first come, first served basis with my able friend, Ms. Sutton, who could take down those names. Lawyers obviously would be present at the site visit, and a certain sort of limited number of sort of technical people that might assist in pointing out various aspects of the site that would be important. And we can get down to the specifics of those numbers as the date approaches, but that's sort of what I have in mind. March 6th at 10 o'clock, limited number of people with a follow-up site visit at the conclusion where people who hadn't been on the first visit would have an opportunity to be there. Following the site visit on March 6th, I would expect the first evidentiary hearing to open on Tuesday, March 9th at 7 o'clock. And as I said previously, all of the hearings are going to start at 7. March 9th would be the first hearing. And I would expect that there would be some opening statement type presentations that evening. And maybe we would even get to the beginning of some of the testimony. The next hearing would be on Thursday, March 11th at 7 o'clock. And it was suggested to me by others who are involved in the other 40B project that it's probably a good idea, to the extent that we can, to keep the hearing dates Tuesdays and Thursdays, or at least some separation between the dates to the extent that we can, to give people a chance to sort of regroup and think about the next hearing. So the first hearing would be March 9th, second Thursday, March 11th. The following week, we would do Tuesday, March 16th. We would skip that Thursday. The next hearing would be Tuesday, March 23rd. For some reason, we couldn't do the Thursday that week on March 25th. So the next hearing after that would be Wednesday, March 24th. We'd have a bit of a hiatus, come back on Thursday, April 8th, then Tuesday, April 13th, and Tuesday, April 27th. So in all, there would be, I think, 9 public hearing dates. And hopefully we would be able to get all of the testimony and all of the information that the board needs to make a decision in that time frame. But as I said, under the statutory schedule, we actually have until June 30th to close the public hearing. And so if for some reason there was some spillover and we couldn't conclude by the April 27th, we could at that point schedule some additional day or dates going forward. So that is the schedule I think that the 3 of the board members have all agreed on going forward. Mr. Schomer, does that schedule work for you and your client?
Yes, Mr. Chair, all those dates are good for us so far, and as well as the date of the site walk that you've proposed. Those dates are all fine for us.
Okay. Mr. Brown, Mr. David, are there any other points that we need to discuss tonight?
There are none as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Chair. I do want to point out that I noticed that Ned Corcoran was listed in the attendees list, not as a panelist. I don't know if he's going to try to get back in as a panelist. His name's kind of disappeared from the list. But since you asked if he was in attendance, I thought I would just bring that up.
Okay, great. Just to make a point, I think I've already made it once, but I want everyone to understand, we have all of the written correspondence that's been submitted to the Board of Appeals, and rest assured that at the appropriate time, we will certainly review all of that written testimony that people who have submitted to us. It's important to us, and we will clearly review all of it and take it into account. Sutton is keeping a record of all of the correspondence that we received, and that record is available at the office of the Board of Appeals. So you'll know if you have been properly noted as somebody that has submitted information to the board, and people can continue to send that information to us as the public hearing goes along. So. Unless there's any further questions or thoughts, I think we're probably through for tonight. I look forward to this process. I think all of the members of the board are aware of how important this public hearing process is. We know that there's a great deal of public interest in this proposal, and we're looking forward to hearing all the information that the applicant can bring to bear on the process, all the questions and commentary and testimony from members of the public and lawyers representing members of the town of Milton and the town of Milton in whatever presentation it decides to make or expertise it brings to the process. We're delighted to hear all that. The more information that we have, I think the better able we will be to render a fair and an appropriate decision here. So I look forward to this. I think it will be an interesting and challenging endeavor, and I look forward to seeing you all at the site visit, or some of you on March 6th, and the first evidentiary hearing on March 9th. And with that, I think we can conclude this evening's events. Thank you very much for being here and participating, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Mr. Chair, before we conclude, if I might, just one just quick question for the board,
Sure.
if I may. Particularly in this case, since there is a little bit of a gap between tonight and the next public hearing and the site walk, I guess our suggestion would be perhaps that this time could be used to start the process of peer review. And I understand that the town is already in the process of obtaining proposals from consulting firms to help with the peer review from the town's perspective. So I guess at this point, our suggestion would be that the board members entertain a motion to appoint peer review in accordance with whatever proposals that the town's planning staff approves, and of course your own consultant, Ms. Barrett, approves. Okay, I'm not sure what is the motion that you want us to act on? Just a suggestion, Mr. Chair, that the board consider discussing appointing peer review at this point, or at least authorizing peer review to be appointed. Well, I'm certainly in favor of authorizing peer review to be appointed. Mike, Ted, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think it's a good use of time, but I'd be interested to hear from Ms. Barrett if she has any thoughts on this.
I would as well.
Thank you. So we actually did initiate the procurement process a couple of weeks ago in consultation with the town administrator and your procurement officer. We have proposals for site civil, traffic, and design review. Those proposals have all been, and of course, contracts attached to the proposals. Those have all gone to town council. To the best of my knowledge, have been reviewed. I think that they are in front of the selectmen, perhaps to sign this week, so that your peer review consultants will be on board and ready to start. Not only for this project, but of course, another one that is moving forward a little bit faster because it just started earlier.
Sure. And with that timeline that you just articulated, would you anticipate that they would be then prepared to testify and offer their thoughts during the hearings that we've just scheduled at some point?
Yes, I would certainly expect so. I mean, I doubt by March 9th, but certainly within that group of dates that you mentioned. Everything, of course, is contingent on the escrow account being adequately funded so that the town can sign those contracts. And I think that there's maybe some communication going on about that with the applicant, but we have the proposals. They have been reviewed by me and by your planning director, and they're really ready to sign. It's just we need to make sure that the town isn't asked to sign contracts for which there's insufficient funding.
Understood. Mr. Schomer, is that responsive to your question?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and I can confirm that we have had some conversations with the planning staff regarding funding those escrow accounts. We're reviewing those, and we'll get those funds into the town as soon as we can. Okay. Well, that sounds like we're on the right heading there in terms of getting people signed up and funded and in a position to offer their expertise and testimony at least by late March, April timeframe on one of the dates or one or more of the dates that we've just set out and agreed to. Thank you, Mr. Schomer, for bringing that up. Any other points that we should address before we close for the evening? I don't believe so, Mr. Chair. Like you mentioned, we're looking forward to presenting this project, and we look forward to a productive hearing. We hope it's a project that the town can come to approve. Okay. Mr. Brown, anything further from you?
Nothing further from me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Daver?
Nothing from me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I apologize for the glitches at the beginning. It was largely due to the fact that I came here without a laptop. I just foolishly thought that one would be magically provided to me, and so most of the fault for any difficulties at the beginning here were mine, and I will do my best not to have a occur again as we move forward. So thank you all for attending again, and look forward to the site visit and then to the first evidentiary hearing on March 9th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.